So the first thing I'm going to do is let everyone know that we do have a place to publish Q&A. I do have the Q&A here as well. Sydney's already beaten me to the punch. Thank you, Sydney. Hey-o, Joel. Hopefully everyone is doing well. Make sure that now that we're live, can everybody see this, maybe with a slight delay? Cool. We'll give it 2 minutes for folks to trickle in. I know we only got 32 people right now, so we'll see if we can pump that a little bit. I'm getting a bad network quality. I'm hoping we're not pushing Teams past its thing here. My network should be okay.
No, you sound fine, and the video seems fine. I think that just comes up whenever there's a blip. So they're probably not taking enough samples.
Right.
I don't need to share video, so.
I don't even know if they can see it.
When I hover over this little
you can
thing,
see it as a presenter. Like I don't know if the general audience sees our cameras.
well, I did start it, and it does say my desktop is live. So.
No, but it's only yeah, it's only because you're in this view, right?
That it turned black.
No, like I don't know.
I've got a thing in my lower right-hand corner that says live and recording.
Yeah, my point is it doesn't show us, our individual cameras, but only we as presenters see it.
Oh, yes. Yes, I would have to, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I can add individual presenters unless I add one at a time.
All right, I don't think we need to worry about that.
Oh, yeah, so my video is actually not going to show at all, huh?
Yeah, that's...
So I don't even really need it.
That off.
All right, we're learning. This is fully distributed now. We don't have a room to train the camera on, so thank you for everyone being patient with us. This is the first ever fully distributed remote PowerShell community call. We're making history here, folks. All right, we'll click over at 9:33 just to make sure everybody's got a chance here. We got 47. That's looking healthy. All right. So for those that are not aware, you can hop into the Q&A. Sydney Smith has posted a link to a GitHub issue that we have here where you can post your questions. We'll be doing Q&A here at the end. So go ahead and hop into that thread if you've got some discussion that you want to do. The Q&A is also open, although we can't promise we're monitoring it quite as closely as this one, but just go ahead and blast your stuff and we'll get to it. Now we can hop into PowerShell 7. So we did not have a community call last month due to the MVP Summit, so we now get to talk about our GA release. It's been extremely positive thus far. We've seen some good adoption uptick already. If you hop into our AKMS/PS GitHub BI, unfortunately has not yet been updated with the 7.0 numbers, but we will be getting that soon. And some cursory glances at that tells us that a good 10 to 15% of the session starts are already on 7.0, which is awesome. People are picking it up real fast. We will be incorporating some of that new telemetry into the public dashboard over the course of the next month or so, but overall, we're just really satisfied with the release. I think if folks have questions here, more than happy to answer them, but to be honest, I haven't seen any real blockers out there in the wild with the 7.0. Obviously, this is a LTS supported release, so it's going to be supported for the duration of .NET Core 3.1, which is another 2.5 years. And as that happens, if any major problems arise, we'll service those as we service Windows PowerShell in the past. So, yeah, I think with that we can. Steve, did you have anything to add on the 7.0 front? Or you just want to hop right into the 7.1 stuff?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add there. I mean, like, it's been a really great release. Appreciate all the work from the community. I'm also looking forward to when we have an updated dashboard.
Yes, yes. We've got some internal preview stuff, but we just got to get it all pretty, and it doesn't really make sense quite yet unless you know what's happening underneath the hood. But I figure maybe we could talk about first party before 7.1, just given that this was a lot of backwards looking. So I will. I don't want to totally put Sydney on the spot, so I will preload this a little bit. But basically, we held, inspired by the .NET team, we held an internal first party conference at Microsoft, fully virtualized. We had to originally plan for physical and switched over to virtual given this current situation. Basically, the goal here is to grow awareness of PowerShell at Microsoft, to learn more about how teams at Microsoft are already using PowerShell, and to really evangelize a lot of the great work that we're doing with 7.0. Some of this is some, selfish customer-oriented stuff where we're going, hey, we want, all you module owners who maybe have been ignoring us or we don't know about yet, or people that haven't really understood the value of moving to 7 to, adopt 7 as a target for their modules. We also had a number of individual or internal IT folks, as well as many of the PFEs or consultants. Those are the premier field engineers that you folks may work with out in the field. So we had a really diverse audience, of course, in addition to the software development teams that joined. So it was really successful. Sydney, do you want to make a couple more notes on sort of some of our learnings and how that went?
Sure, yeah. So sort of the way we formatted the day was we had half of the day was sessions from various partner teams that we work closely with. So they got to share broadly, how they had incorporated 7.0 into their work, maybe like how they were making changes to their modules, or even just like using it in their workflow. So that was really cool to sort of share broadly, real customer stories, even if they were internal customers. And then we spent half of the day, members from Steve's team gave really excellent sessions around some of the various tools and processes that we use internally to help people better write PowerShell and sort of migrate their PowerShell to later versions of PowerShell. So overall, we got really excellent feedback from all of the people who attended. We had a couple hundred attendees that they learned a lot and were really excited to go back to their teams and share that learning. I think one of the biggest takeaways was the number of requests we got immediately following the conference for recordings of the sessions and session materials so that people could really evangelize the things that they had learned that day with their team. So that was pretty successful for us, and we're looking forward to continuing to build those partnerships and have more meetups in the future.
So let me just add a couple of things. I think first off, Cindy did a great job organizing this. The conference was for Microsoft internal, but it was global. So we did have a number of callers who were calling from other locations on the planet outside of Redmond, where it was really early for them, we're really late, and we really appreciate them calling in. And also, a lot of the content that my team actually presented for the first party, because Microsoft is a huge company, and a lot of these partners aren't aware of a lot of stuff that we're doing in the community and open source. A lot of that content is already either already has been published at docs.microsoft.com or will be updated to have that content. So we're not like keeping anything necessarily internal, but this is really targeting internal partners to make sure they're aware of what's happening to PowerShell 7.
Yeah, and I think I made a note here. We're going to evaluate some of the recordings and see its potential that some of these possibly are shareable externally, potentially postable in the YouTube channel, because some of them are not talking necessarily about internal stuff and may be helpful to the community at large. But this was also a great forcing function for us to update a lot of our documentation on how to develop modules and that sort of thing, and really drove some of our end-to-end thinking around that. So yeah. With that, I think we can hop over to 7.1 plans. Steve, do you want to talk about the roadmap blog that you published here?
So that was, I forget now, a couple of weeks ago, that was published after a 7.0 release about where the team is spending their time as part of 7.1. So 7.1 is expected to be released by end of this calendar year. So again, I think we talked about this several times. We're trying to snap much more closely with the .NET releases. So preview 1 of 7.1 was on .NET 5 preview 1. I expect preview 2 of PowerShell 7.1 to come out later this month, and we are aligning with .NET 5 preview 3. So although we did, and thanks to Chris Bergmeister for doing this work, we did move master branch to .NET 5 preview 2, and that found some issues early on. We've been working closely with the .NET team to see if we can pick up more like nightly builds, not literally their nightly builds, but releases they have gone through some validation, but before they actually have a formal release, so we can find issues early. So the goal here is to try to see if we can sim ship a release candidate in GA. I'm not promising that we'll actually be able to do that, but we're getting much closer, so hopefully it won't be like weeks or months later after they release.
Yeah, for those that don't know the term, sim ship, this is short for simultaneously shipping. So we're working basically, and there was an interesting thread from Joel Bennett on Twitter like last weekend, saying, hey, like, we're not getting the full 3 years out of the LTS if you're not shipping as close to the LTS as possible, and there's potential to be out of support for some period of time, or you don't have a new PowerShell for people to move to once the active branch happens. So that's why we're really working to simultaneously ship as closely as possible to them, and we're talking to them even more frequently than we did in the past to make sure that we're not putting PowerShell users in any kind of tenuous situation with regards to support. So
Yeah, so the other thing I'll mention about 7.1, I'm just going to talk very high level because I hope people just read the blog to get some of the details, and we'll share more of those details as actually we have more concrete plans on what we're actually going to have in the 7.1 timeframe. But basically at a high level, we're looking at investments in tooling. So, the PowerShell Get v3 is already happening. We've got preview 1 already shipped, and we'll hopefully they'll get complete and stable and get good feedback that we can see whether or not that ships with 7.1. And then we have the secret management work, which we appreciate a lot of feedback. Again, one of the themes we're doing is we're trying to get these previews out early, which is meaning that they're not feature or functionally complete, so that we can get feedback on the experience and some of the decisions we made, whether they're right. And we got some really good feedback on secret management, which resulted in a lot of change that we have to take, breaking changes, but they're the right changes. So hopefully people understand, like, as we're releasing early previews, they will be more rough by design so that you can get that feedback early. I mean, it's one of the reasons we also got the PS3 Line 2.1 preview, or they're calling Beta 1 now, out early, is so that we can get some feedback on the experience. That way we can make adjustments before it's too late and things get locked in. So that's one of the big areas. We'll have a separate thing about Script Analyzer too, so I won't cover that in detail. Let me see what else. So maybe I'll just jump into minimal PowerShell since that was brought up on the GitHub issue. So I kind of cover this lightly in the blog post, and I want to make sure everyone understands, like, this is more of a long-term investment and not something that, for sure, it will not be something you'll probably see anything in 7.1 itself. But one of the things that we've been talking about within the team is, I don't know if everyone realizes, but PowerShell Core /7 has grown quite a bit as .NET Core, now just called .NET, has grown in terms of capability. So things like WinForms, WPF, Active Directory, like all these things got added. And at the time we're trying to get 7 out, we want to make sure we have as close to parity with Windows, PowerShell, and .NET Framework as possible, which means you include everything because you don't know what user scripts will be doing. And I think for the developer, the author of the script, it makes sense to have as much as possible. But one of the things we recognize is, as they're trying to look at new scenarios like small devices or containers or constrained, scenarios, you really know maybe ahead of time that you're running a specific set of scripts. So you don't need all this stuff. So the idea is, like, how do we make it possible to deploy on a managed node a much smaller PowerShell, like smaller in terms of not just .NET assemblies, but also refactoring parts of PowerShell so we don't take dependencies on .NET assemblies where we don't need to, which would also improve startup time, memory usage, CPU, things like that. And then even within PowerShell itself, SMA, system management automation, the main assembly for PowerShell is huge. It includes many things like Intellisense, the help system, the parser, remoting, like all this stuff, right? So there are definitely scenarios where you don't need all those things. So the question is, can we turn those into like a new plugin model so that you really just can deploy what you need to get whatever business work you need to get done. So that'd be much smaller. So it's not just smaller in terms of disk footprint, but also means because we're deploying less assemblies, there's less attack surface and less patching surface. So those are good security benefits. So this is a huge effort because we want to maintain backwards compatibility. That's where a lot of the complexity is going to come from. So I imagine that we would start this investigation in 7.1 timeframe, and I don't know when a end would look like. It may not. We may not have something in 7.2. Maybe it takes 7.3. I don't know. But we're going to start this investment now so that we can actually have something in the future. Yeah, Joey's seeing some good notes there.
And on that note, if anyone has scenarios that they have where they'd love to deploy PowerShell 7, but it's too large for them, or it takes too long to deploy, or the performance is significantly lacking, you know, we'd love to hear sort of where your goalposts are in terms of, you know, how small does it need to get, or how performant does it need to get in order for you to suddenly be able to go and deploy PowerShell in those environments. So if you have anything like that, we'd love to hear about it in the chat, or similarly, you know, you can reach out to us on Twitter or via email. I don't want to write it down here, although I'll type it into the chat here. But this is my my email.
That's a big one.
What's that?
I just you're inviting all the spammers.
I'm not, because I'm not putting it into text that can be OCR skimmed, because I'm going to take it out now, but it will be in the video as well. And if you want to email me, but we're always open on Twitter as well. You can ping me or Steve or anybody else on the PowerShell team, and we'll get back to you. But
yep. Or you can also reply to this issue in the
reply to this issue. That's actually the best way to do it. But if you need to talk privately, you can ping us offline.
So then the next big area that I'll mention for 7.1 that we will see some actual results in is going to be the improvements in the shell experience and the interactive experience. So one of the things that, you know, even I'll mention, like, even like with the first party conference, like even within Microsoft, there are teams that don't love using PowerShell for various reasons. So these are some of the things that we're trying to address, is really making the shell, you know, a place where you can live in and be very productive. And part of that is really addressing some of the things that we've had in the past, where you could go to like a tutorial on, let's say, kube control or something else. That's not necessarily one that has a problem, but like cutting and pasting those commands that should work in any shell may not work in PowerShell for various reasons. So we need to address some of that. There's also issues where you're trying to mix native commands with PowerShell semantics, like PowerShell drives and stuff like that. So we should try to get those working. And then, like, we're doing some investments on PS readline with changes in the PowerShell engine for prediction. That way you can type less, because we can kind of anticipate that you're trying to do this or that. Things like
and
that.
Steve, I think Jason actually, I'm sorry I didn't back with you, but Jason might actually have some quick demo that he can show here on this.
Sure. So we can have him demo that later in terms of what we've done so far. But I think that kind of covers the majority of like the 7.1 roadmap. It's not going to be we're making very targeted investments in this case. So
yeah, I mean, I'll say, you know, this is something too where some of this is that we know in the 7.1 timeframe, and this wasn't necessarily in Steve's roadmap blog, but we do know that we're pretty backlogged on issues, PR contributions. You know, the community has always been able to drive some, you know, at least one new theme into a lot of our releases. You know, for instance, 6.0, you know, we didn't originally have this plan to massively enhance all the REST and JSON commandlets, you know, but Mark Krause really drove a lot of that. And we want to do some more of that for things that make sense. The problem is that, you know, some of them are a lot more for us to sort of triage and tackle. You know, depending on where we are by mid-year, you know, we may move more aggressively into looking at those, but we're coming up with novel ways that we can potentially, you know, deal with this backlog, because we do know that that's an issue, and we do want to make sure that we're incorporating as much of the enthusiasm and willingness to contribute as possible into the 7.1 timeframe. So, yeah. If we don't have anything there, Steve, since we are still on that, I know probably Script Analyzer 2.0 probably has a demo as well. So maybe we can just show this Predictive Intellisense and then kick over to Script Analyzer.
Sounds good.
Jason, you want to take over here?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to share my screen and
I think
show
you
the sky.
share, and then I need to send live, possibly.
Okay.
It was funny. This was going totally black before, and now it's actually showing up on both sides. I don't know.
Who knows?
Share.
Who knows? Oop, okay.
Do you see that? Do you see my screen?
Yep. I actually see it on the live, too.
Awesome. So you guys know that tab completion is a big accelerator and a big help for both discovery and accelerating getting through your commands so you don't have to type so much. So one of the things that we've been looking at, and you may have already seen that we've been looking at this, is predictive intellisense. So notice when I start typing, notice in the light green, and I can make this screen bigger, sorry about that. That's the prediction. Now, right now, predictions are coming from the PS read line history. And as I change my typing, the predictions will start to type. Now, there's all kinds of additional things that you can start to do here, like roll through previous commands in your history. So I can go through previous commands in my history and see what they are. And if I see a command that I want to accept, I can accept it quickly and easily. Let me show you a better example here. I'm going to do get child item. And actually, I'm going to roll this to something that I don't like. I don't like that. And I'm going to start to step through this and accept parts of it. Now, when I get to the path, it's pointing to a file system path. I didn't want that. I just wanted it to my current file system. And I see that it's not changing as I expected it. That's okay. I must have messed up the keys. Let me just do this again and see if I can show you something here. I'm going to roll this guy. Well, you can see the predictions rolling across the screen, but let me just show you accepting one really quick here. If I wanted to accept this, I could accept the whole line. I could go back and undo and change some of these. I can change properties and it'll change the prediction. So this is what we're looking at. And as quickly, got an issue here that we just posted up. If you want to give us some feedback and see more about it. Also, one of the things in the issue, this is an issue in the PS read line repo. It's 1468, and one of the things I want to point out is that Dombo has put together a little prototype if you want to try this and work with some of the predictions yourself that you can grab and install here out of the gallery. You can also use, of course, the command that's like install module to get it as well. And back to you, Joey.
Thank you so much, Jason. Yeah, we're really excited about this. You know, we think there's a bunch of different ways that completers can potentially tie in here, and we're still working on exactly what that interface looks like. But you know, we do eventually want to move beyond the history-based stuff and you know, have some potentially very intelligent completers. You know, potentially context-aware to Azure or you know, more general or O365 or whatever. But we're looking into that and hopefully can share more soon. There was a note, I just peeked into the comments about the, oh, Sydney, do you mean to be requesting control here?
Nope, I do not.
Okay, no worries. So there was a note in there about Platypus v2 as well. I think we'll probably talk first about the script analyzer stuff, but I can speak to some of this with Platypus as well. Yeah, Sydney or anybody else script analyzer, you want to take it from here and we can talk PSSA?
Yeah, sure. So as if you've read Steve's 7.1 blog, or maybe you've heard us sort of talking about, we're in the very early stages of thinking through a script analyzer 2.0. And what that means is a major version update to script analyzer with a few key goals in mind. So our high level goals right now are number one, to improve performance and stability, and this is particularly around the formatting rules. And this is really key because of how heavily Script Analyzer is actually used in PowerShell Editor services, or in other words, in the VS Code extension. So by improving the performance of Script Analyzer, we can also significantly improve the performance of your editing experience and address some of our long-standing formatting rules in the editor. Our second goal is around making the compatibility rules easier to use, more friendly, and sort of more useful. And in the broadest sense. And then the third rule is to have a simplified, more consistent experience around writing your own rules and also configuring existing rules. So with those like 3 goals in mind, we've started some really light prototyping and sort of building out what Script Analyzer 2.0 might look like, which is where you guys all come into play and why we wanted to bring it up in the call today, because we really are in the early molding phase of this project. We would love to hear from you all how we can make this version update best serve your needs, the ways that you already use Script Analyzer and the ways you would like to use Script Analyzer in the future. So if you have feature requests for Script Analyzer 2.0, now is the time to speak up about those. So if you do have requests, a few ways to make them. Number one, opening issues in the repo, the Script Analyzer repository, but also feel free to comment them in the chat today, or reach out to myself, Rob, or Jim, who are all working on the project. And we would love to hear how we can make Script Analyzer 2.0 work really well for you. I don't know, Rob or Jim, if you had anything else you wanted to mention.
This space.
Oh, sorry. What's that, Steve?
I think Joey just ran out of disk space.
Oh dear.
On the drive that Google Drive is on, it's fine.
Oh, okay.
I run out of disk space like on some drive like almost every week.
I was just going to say, I think Sydney, you covered that pretty well. Yeah, it's a we're looking at a pretty major renovation of Script Analyzer, and so we're really open to collecting any and all sort of pain points, feature requests, anything, especially anything that sort of like goes beyond what's something that might have been conflicting with what's possible today in Script Analyzer because of a design decision it made that maybe we don't have to stick with anymore.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, so please come, hop into the issues here if you care about this. If you're using Script Analyzer, even if you're just using it through the VS Code extension, it's still, something that definitely will impact you, and the default rules and the way that compatibility experience is and so on and so forth. So definitely we want to get your feedback there. So this one I will try and set up briefly, maybe pop over to Jason for 2 minutes because I know he's been working on this one. But basically this, for those that don't know, Platypus is our a doc conversion module. So this is one that takes markdown based help and converts it into MAML, which is a specific kind of XML that the PowerShell help engine uses. We've had a desire for a long time to switch over to something more markdown based, but that really requires that all of our tool chain behind that is updated kind of simultaneously in order to support that. So for now, we're really just trying to enable all of the existing versions of PowerShell with better help. Jason, you want to talk briefly to sort of the effort that's happening there and the targeted investments that we're making in Platypus?
Sure. So as Joey just mentioned, we're working on our own internal pipelines to solve that age-old problem of I want to get updatable help into my help system, and that's allowing us the time and the effort to work on Platypus. And we're looking at a lot of schema updates and changes to improve Platypus overall. And just to kind of give you an idea on timing on that is I'm currently working on a bare bones spec right now that as soon as I've had a chance to discuss with Steve and Aditya, we'll be making that public as an issue as well, and look forward to all of your feedback and helping us get Platypus in the place where we all want it to be as we continue to work on updating our own tooling internally to fix internal help.
Yeah, so the key bit here is that we're working with internal teams both within the docs organization at Microsoft in order to drive this, and then we're doing that to sort of amplify out to a bunch of other teams at Microsoft that may or may not have had their commandlet help up to date. I know there's a lot of frustration around this. I saw something on Reddit maybe a month ago that was hard for me to disagree with any bit of it. This is something I've been frustrated with for the almost 6 years that I've been on the team now, and the intention here is to solve problems like, hey, when I run update help on Windows PowerShell, Windows Update Provider fails every time. Those sorts of things we're trying to address in a company-wide way so that we're not running into problems like that again in the future, because it's been sort of whack-a-mole over the years in trying to get individual teams to understand the intricacies of the help system, and they really shouldn't have to. So yeah, we're going to get there and hopefully have more to share on the Platypus front soon. But yeah.
Let me just add one more thing that maybe wasn't clear. Is like Platypus is also intended to be a third party for any module author who needs help content with their module.
Yeah, this is a public open source module. I was actually added it to the thing here because someone in the chat asked about the Platypus 2.0.
Yeah.
I think the bulk of the customer facing enhancements there'll be some bug fixes and that sort of thing, but I think it's going to really be around the schema being somewhat simplified and easier to work with. I don't think you're going to see any major changes to the help system there. But this is a thing where if we can get everyone on the same page with regards to Markdown and we can get everything in a clean place, then we can move on to somewhere where, in future versions of PowerShell, we're simply managing, zips full of Markdown files, which is potentially much easier. But really, half this battle is around getting teams to continually update the content and to make sure that their module manifests are configured correctly to deliver the help or pull the help from the web. So that part's not quite as applicable to you folks. Cool. I think we probably have a ton of questions, and we're at like 10:01. So maybe can somebody maybe start reading some of these to me?
Sure. Let me go to the GitHub first. See if there's anything we haven't covered yet. Let's see. We talked about the minimal PowerShell. Let's see. Joel Sallow wants to ask about his dispose RFC. I think that maybe Joe, you can talk more about this, but we have been spending we've been spending more time on the RFC's repo, getting that cleaned up, and we did look at this specific one. I don't believe we signed off on it yet. I think we agreed that this is something we want, and I think there were some open questions, but
yeah, I think the bulk of the difficulty, if I'm recalling our conversation correctly, was around really giving the user an opportunity to cancel the dispose, right? So this is a classic issue where we, there are module authors who want to say, hey, if you Control-C me, I still need to clean up. Like there's stuff I got to do real quick so that you're not leaving me in a broken state with this Control-C. And there's a very reasonable scenario for that. Like there's I could have a file open or something like that, and I want to make sure I close my file handle cleanly. On the flip side, if I'm a user and I tell you to stop, I really want you to stop. And I think there's been, many of us can attest to the fact that there is very little that's more frustrating than jamming Control-C over and over and over and over again and having something in the application block your Control-C, right? And so with the dispose RFC, we had some concerns about, the ability for a user to cancel a dispose function that, could be in an infinite loop, may have gone off the rails and maybe doing something that they don't want it to do. And maybe they're saying, I don't care about cleanliness, like just shut me down now. So I think that was where we kind of landed with it. I think that we hadn't peeked back into it. We can certainly pop it onto our stack for our next agenda item. I know this is not how we want to be running that sort of prioritization long term, and I hope to provide some more updates there very soon. Steve's breathing down my neck, but we'll take a peek at it. But that was, if I recall, the difficult aspect of that conversation.
Sounds right. Moving ahead, Ilya, let's see, can I work on file system provider improvements? So on that one, if you're on the call, I think that one thing that we talked about is, and we have an issue already open on this, is really looking at the file system provider as a rewrite, as a V2, and making that an experimental feature. That way, we know that if we want to write a lot of the wrongs during the file system provider, because today it just assumes NTFS, assumes Windows, and even besides those assumptions, it has some fundamental issues. I think that any changes are likely going to be breaking changes. So kind of we want to see what the feedback is on terms of what's acceptable and what's not. So that's why looking at a V2 kind of model and have it side by side, but you would just enable one versus the other. So if you're open for that, I would say go for it. It might be worth looking at that issue to see what the specific problems were before just heading into writing a lot of code. Is what I'd recommend. And then on the second one, migrate to a new API.
Can everyone still see my screen?
I don't know. I'm looking at GitHub right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a.
Oh, do you have it open?
Yeah, I just have this Teams.exe application error that's going to terminate the program if I hit OK, and it seems to still be running fine.
Oh.
So I'm just going to keep running.
Move that window off the screen so you don't click it for now.
All right. Okay.
Good luck.
Classic Windows. Yeah, for some period of time. Sorry, Steve, for
No,
interrupting.
did you move that dialogue? Because I still see that dialogue. It might be that
Yeah,
you're
there's a delay. There's a delay. It's just going to move over in a second. Yeah.
crashed, and I'm just seeing a remnant of what you're.
No, mine's. You can hear me right now, so it's still running.
That's true. The audio is working. Okay. Anyways, continuing. So the local accounts module. One of the things for sure is we need to enable that on 7 because the Windows PowerShell one relies on private APIs, and after we talked to that team, they have no plans to make those public, so there's no hope there. But if we can also get a cross-platform solution, I think that'd be ideal. And then there's improvements in build process, like using code analyzer, code-based cleanups. Will team have time to review? So I would say I always welcome improvements to some of the things like adding new analyzers and stuff. I think it's probably, before doing that specific work, it's probably worth having discussion with the other maintainers. We still have that public Teams channel, I'm pretty sure, because it's hard to say whether or not it's worth the effort because a lot of those end up taking a lot of time to review. I think for the general statement, will the team have time to review? Like one of the things we've talked internally with the team, we don't have a solution yet, is we recognize that the team has been focused on a lot of specific things, and we haven't been able to spend as much time on the community PRs or issues. Partly also because as the project has grown, the team size hasn't necessarily grown along with it. So we appreciate all the new contributors and all the quantity of contributors in the same set, but we haven't been able to scale as quickly. So we're trying to figure out some ways to mitigate some of that. Some of the plus 10 time zone, we get to get a recorded session. So all right. So I think Joey generally does a good job taking notes. So hopefully that will answer for people who can't see this live some of the answers. And I believe we do post the recorded video and the transcripts. So hopefully all that gets published. So I think that should answer that question.
Unfortunately,
What?
I am frozen in the browser for some reason. So Teams is not working, but VS Code's working. So I can't see the issue anymore.
That's okay. I'll just keep going. There's only a few more, at least currently posted. There's a question about Exchange Team to make progress with the admin module, get them to core compatible. So I don't recall the last, and this doesn't say Exchange Online, it says Exchange. So I assume you're talking specifically about on-prem. We've had conversations with the Exchange Online team. They are making, Exchange Online team specifically is making efforts so that their future releases will be PowerShell 7 compatible. I don't know, Joey, if you guys on the PMs have talked to the Exchange on-prem side. If this
I have not in a very long time. I wouldn't say a very long time, maybe 9 months. The Exchange server on-prem's primary take here is that their testing matrix is already pretty massive. They are not making super active investments in that module. And so, if you do need the on-prem, I think now you're somewhat stuck with leaning on the Windows PowerShell compatibility layer. If you do hit issues with that, let us know. There's potentially stuff we can fix in PowerShell itself in order to address those problems. But I think right now, we're really focused more on the Exchange Online module, getting over especially the V2 that they ship on the gallery, yeah, that's the primary focus. But I don't think we're going to get a whole lot out of the Exchange server on-prem module with regards to NetCore. It's resting on a lot of lot of traditional Windows APIs, some of which have not been ported over. I think it may have a dependency on system.web, but I'm not sure.
I think the other part of that question is, even if they don't natively work in PowerShell 7, I presume that this is making a statement that it doesn't work with the implicit remoting Windows PowerShell side. I haven't played with that specific module, but I know that, for example, WSS module relies on the user having access to live objects. So that's a difficult problem. It's something that we're talking about internally at the team to see if we can address, but it's not going to be anything we would be able to address in the short term.
It looks like the question's been updated, and Aston was talking about.
Exchange Online. Okay. Yeah, so Exchange Online, I think the good news is we are actively talking to that team, and they are working on it. It'll take time because they have a large set of commandlets. So I don't have a time frame to give. I'll leave it to them to publicize that. Darwin, it looks like, wants to just let people know that he's got an example of using PowerShell, including Windows PowerShell and PowerShell 7 on GitLab. So that's pretty awesome. Thomas says that PS Line does not work on 5.1 on Windows 2012 R2. There's an open issue, so we'll just have to take a look at that. There's a secondary question. Will 7.0 get enhancements including 7.1? So the short answer is no. So for 7.0 being LTS release, we want to really minimize any code churn, because every time we change code, there's a risk of regression. The one area where we may take targeted changes is going to be in the Windows compatibility layer experience, because we want to make sure that's solid, and we already know there are some issues there. So I believe Andrew's already made some of those fixes in 7.1, and I think that after we get some feedback from a 7.1 preview with those changes, then we can discuss whether or not the risk level of taking those back to 7.0. Otherwise, we are really just looking at critical fixes for 7.0, including security fixes. With that said, I know that there are some fixes that we've made post 7.0 GA, like in the concise view and stuff like that, that we would want to push out in a 7.01 servicing release, which I don't have a date for right now. Oh, actually, it looks like Joel Bennett kind of answered that as well.
Where did I get cut off?
Hold on, I'm looking on my screen.
Can you hear me again?
I can hear you for sure. I don't see anything. Wait. Oh, you're sharing again.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Teams actually fully crashed. It eventually the stack overflowed or whatever. Right. So what was the last thing you heard from me? Because I actually said some good stuff there.
Oh, great. From you, you were talking about Exchange, I think. What's the last?
I just said that did you get the part about the OAuth token, the AAD token?
No, I don't recall you saying anything about that.
Okay, so they're breaking compatibility for what they call basic auth, which is username and password with a single factor. So this old new PS session method, where see, now it's not showing that my screen is sharing, which is making me nervous. Okay, I don't have the red bar, but I'm presuming it's working. But yeah, you'll have to use an OAuth token in that new PS session method. But with the V2 module, they're moving to a device auth model that looks a lot like what Azure PowerShell has done with device auth, and so we're going to have that lit up in the V2 gallery module for Exchange Online, hopefully in the next few months here.
Yep.
Cool. Sorry about that.
It's all right. Let me see. Moving on. Olav, ETA for MSIX. Yeah, so right now I don't have an ETA because there's no work on the team side. It's all waiting on some other teams in Microsoft to publish the appropriate cert so we can sign it appropriately. I ping them basically every couple of days, a week, and things are progressing slowly. But because of that, I can't provide an ETA, but it's still in plan.
Yeah, I do want to caveat that primarily the MSIX scenario here is built around us delivering into the store in such a way that the install that you get from the store can access all of your system level resources the same way that a built-in version would. I don't think we currently have plans to productize the MSIX itself. And this has come up with some internal discussions, and I don't think we've been as clear as we should have been, but I don't really have any scenarios out there that I understand for folks to use the MSIX as an individual package and not through the store. So if you do have a reason that you need to use an MSIX instead of an MSI, and you're not interested in using the store, please post about that in your comment, or ping us offline, because right now we don't really know of any reason why someone would want to do that. The MSI works just great in automated scenarios, and the MSIX, as other MSIXs do, often does not, and particularly in embedded server environments. So the store provides a lot of stuff on top of that. So if you are trying to consume the raw MSIX for some reason, please tell us why.
Yep. There's also potentially a bug report. 7.1 preview 1 installs as PowerShell 7 preview, which is actually by design. But he says it looks like pre-7.0 GA. Oh, yeah. So I guess the statement here is we are. So future.
Sorry, what's the question?
I'm trying to summarize it, but basically, when you install 7.1 preview 1, it's from PowerShell 7 preview X, which is by design, meaning that on that preview channel, it will continually, as long as you install the MSI, it will update over the old preview. So 7.0 preview and 7.1 preview are not side by side. It's by design that installs over the top, and it doesn't differentiate. So it doesn't call itself 7.1 preview. It will just be PowerShell 7. MSI's app attached with WVD testing mostly. That's the Windows virtual desktop.
So what is the question? Yeah,
just the question. You asked. Your question was who wants the MSIX outside of the store? And Olaf is saying there may be a scenario with Windows Virtual Desktop, which I would think would have store access, but maybe it's a policy thing. But I don't know enough about.
I'll peek into that. I've only used Windows Virtual Desktop. I haven't met with any of those teams or anything like that. So I'll look into that. But I wasn't aware that they were, like, presumably the fact that I'm able to use like Outlook and Teams and stuff like that tells me that there's got to be support for more than MSIX.
I mean, I know I'm getting access to apps that are MSI based, so I know they can do MSI apps. They're using like Remote Desktop Manager, which is MSI based.
Got it. Yeah, no. So I'm not sure, but we can poke into it. But please provide more details if you have them.
All right, I'm gonna skip over to the Q&A now. See if there's anything that hasn't been covered.
Sounds good.
Let's see. There's a lot of. There's a question on where the video recording is posted. So links to the video and transcript are always posted to the RFC repo. There's a
when they're posted.
Yeah, when they're posted. There's a community call folder.
Yeah, we're way behind. I'm working to transition some of the grittier tasks to more of the other PowerShell PMs now that we have a pretty strong PM team here. So I'm sorry. There's just been folders full of videos that are sitting there, and we need to get them posted. But given that we have such a backlog, I think we can start from now and try to work our way back. But yeah, the link is always when they're posted. Videos and notes are available at AKMS community call.
All right. There's a question about IntelliSense speed in VS Code, and I know that with the last major release of the extension, we did a big redesign on top of OmniSharp, which should have improved some of that. So I'm just wondering whether or not that is with that release or the prior one.
I can add a little bit on here maybe as well, which is to say, like, yes, we are always working on improving that. And in fact, we made a release of our stable extension today, earlier this morning. That was the first release since that major release, and that included more IntelliSense performance improvements. In particular, Tyler implemented more caching in our IntelliSense process, and so that change went out in our last preview release, and so far seems to have made improvements, but yes, always room for more improvement in that category as well.
Awesome. Let's see, keep going down. Any updates on VS Code PowerShell extension? Okay, we just talked about that. Looks like Tyler's also responding.
Yeah, I guess just to directly answer that question too, like which one to use, one thing you may have noticed is that we've significantly increased the frequency in which we're releasing the preview extension. So we're almost releasing at a like per PR or 1 to 3 PRs like cadence. So I think in the last month we've had about 4 preview releases. So if you want like really fast changes always to be on the latest stuff, we love it if you can use our preview. If not, those changes are going directly into our stable. So for example, our stable release today incorporated our last 4 preview releases. So it's really up to you as to which extension you're more comfortable with. But at this point in time, they're pretty similar. You don't have a drastically different experience like you might have had before.
Thank you. So Ben has a question about Platypus dependency on YAML.net. I don't know if we're far enough along to make a statement whether or not we remove that dependency, but we should definitely take that as a note that it is a pain point, and we'll see what we can do about that.
What's the pain
Steve,
point?
No, it says it's been a pain for us in the module build price will regenerate markdown from columns to help. I'm not sure exactly what the specific, like it would help maybe Ben if you can open up an issue, provide some more details. Is it because YAML.net is doing something that is not compliant?
Yeah, the YAML support was added sort of as an afterthought in order to enable some internal scenarios that were very specific to a couple teams. And I don't know that it's being used heavily in production with anybody right now. I don't know if, I can't peek over to the browser, unfortunately, but I don't know if you're saying that the YAML.net problem is a dependency because it's conflicting with another module dependency, like the version of it needs to be updated. It might just be like the module isolation problem all over again, or maybe you're just saying, hey, you want the YAML support to be improved. I don't know.
Yeah, we need more details. There's nothing else in that right now.
We do have a need to handle YAML front matter in the markdown. So
yes, thank you.
No, for sure. No matter what, we need to parse the YAML. It's not clear like why YAML.net was called out here. Let's see. So Keto has a thing. Let's see. As part of working better with native commands, could we get support for dot sourcing batch files and have environmental variable changes pulled into PS session? This is very important for C++ devs who need to configure their PS session with VC and vars. Yeah, the VC vars all. That's a good question, Keith. I would suggest opening an issue on that. That wasn't something that we were thinking about.
Yeah, we've been primarily focused on the Windows side, to be honest. So that was not something that, I don't know what would happen. Is there some way to do that in Linux? Like if I run a shell script, can I like is that with exec or something like that? Jim's probably the expert there.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, the shebang is the thing that takes care of all that, right? It includes the interpreter for the script that's just not on Windows, right? We'd have to actually.
No, just to be clear, like I don't think it's a problem of running those batch files.
Right.
Really, that batch file modifies the environment. It wants that replicated back in the parent.
Yeah, right. And the process model kind of completely, because it's a new process, we would actually have to wind up interpreting the command script in order to make that work. So it'd be pretty. I mean, you could play around with. Oh, we'll just exec it in a new.
We have solutions for this in our CI system, so perhaps we should talk about this offline.
Yeah, we can. It's not obvious, but it's possible.
But
and it would work.
The scenario absolutely makes sense to me, especially with Visual Studio, because it doesn't have PowerShell scripts.
But it becomes very expensive to do. And the only thing it does is like put the environment. I mean, it executes the code and puts the environment back into the original process.
Exactly. That's you could. We can talk about it offline. It's an interesting thing. I don't know that any solution that we could come up you'd be satisfied with, but we can certainly investigate it.
Yeah, I think, Keith, one of the things that would help as you file that issue is us understanding potentially like a sample batch script, and if you have some targeted aspect that you're trying to get out of the environment or something like that, but really understanding those real world implications so that we can address it, because I think whatever we do here will be a little bit hacky.
Oh, it'll definitely be that.
I mean, if it's the VS, I mean, he mentioned the VS vars, basically the Visual Studio environment setup batch file. And that specific problem, we have a solution for in our CI system.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe it's worth a blog post or something, but Ben actually came back and said that for the YAML problem that he was mentioning with Platypus, it's specifically about versioning, or Platypus depending on a specific version, and they want to use a different version, so it is about the assembly isolation. So that's something we could fix in Platypus by having a specific load context for those dependencies.
We could just update it more frequently with higher versions of YAML.net, probably.
Yeah, but that's just moving the window.
I know, but it's I don't know how much of the module isolation is going to be long-term helpful there, but we can definitely look into it.
Oh, just to be clear, I don't know if we'll get the full module isolation in 7.1. I'm talking about a module-specific solution, just like how Rob solved it for editor services.
Right. No. I understand that. Yeah. I just I don't know if that has some kind of implication otherwise about
Yeah, we have to look in more detail on this one. So moving on, Keith just mentions that I guess Lee, meaning probably Lee Holmes, has a invoke batch file function that does some of this already. So maybe we can just take a look at that.
Sure.
Well, we'll evaluate and we'll decide what the right thing is. I think that's all I see. There's just a praise on the IntelliSense performance. All right. I don't know if was there other agenda items.
Oh yes, please. I'm sorry, I didn't give Sean. Yeah, please, Sean, go for it.
Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen, and I wanted to talk about the. In case you guys haven't seen it yet, I've added a new community section to the PowerShell docs. And,
are you sharing, Sean?
I don't share.
I thought I was. Let me try again.
I will stop sharing and see if that makes more room for you.
How's that?
Yes.
That we got.
All right. So, and I've added this "What's New in PowerShell Docs" article, where each month I will list. I'll highlight the work that's been done in this space and any new content that was published, and trying to call out community contributions. So this is a place, yeah, to the docs repo, exactly. So just a reminder that if you want to find a way to contribute to PowerShell, contributing to docs is just as important. So I certainly welcome that. And to that end, I've also published the contributor guide here. So if you're interested in contributing to docs, please read through this. I talk about the tools we use and getting set up to work the way we do. And there are specific things in the style guide about how we format and mark up our articles. Some of the guidance here is very specific to some of the limitations we have in the publishing system and PlatyPS as it exists today. So especially in about topics, we have to limit line lengths and things like that. So appreciate if you guys could be aware of these when you're submitting PRs. Under additional resources here, it's a good idea to take a look at this editorial checklist. When you submit a PR, these are the things that we'll be looking at and making sure that you're following. So this is a good sort of checklist to go through as you're submitting changes. But looking forward to more contributions, and maybe you can get your name added to the highlights here.
Thank you so much, John. Yeah, this is awesome. I think one of the things that's really great about this is the fact that we continually are shipping updates to docs, and they're not always really easy for folks to go and find. And it's very often the case that a feature that we shipped a while ago that maybe you were saying, hey, I really would like to use this feature, but there's really not enough documentation out there. We're not doing the same level of promotion to say, hey, now there's this awesome doc that'll guide you through how to use that thing. So definitely check that out for that reason as well, because we're making a lot of pretty significant improvements to docs right now, and there are a lot of new topics that can be very helpful in learning some of these new and sometimes somewhat older features. So thank you so much, Sean.
Joey, I think we are officially at the end, right?
We are officially at the end. I have taken notes here, and I'm going to go ahead and just push this branch so at least it exists somewhere on the web. And then we will work to get this updated. Oh man, my terminal doesn't like me right now. Cool. Yeah. No. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining, and really appreciate it. I know, especially with all the Corona stuff going on, folks have a lot busy stuff in their life. So we really appreciate everyone hopping on this one, and hope to see you next month. So thanks so much, folks, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.